But here's what you need to understand about tax collectors. Tax collectors were the absolute worst. And if you think about it, they still are today, right? I mean, tax collectors were absolutely considered the lowest of the low. And today it'd be compared to like the used car salesman, right? You know, or I could include lawyers or politicians if you want, but I'm trying to give them a break today. But just to paint the picture for you, these tax collectors were considered the quintessential sinner. And I'll tell you why. They were actually Jewish men that worked for the Roman government to extract taxes from the Jewish people to give to the Romans so that they could continue to hold these people in occupation. So you can imagine why, when it came to thinking of what a sinner was, the sinner in their minds, the worst of the worst, was the tax collector. And Jesus is hanging out with the sinners. And so the tax collectors, he's hanging out with them, he's eating with them. And just so you know, this isn't the only time this happened. There's another story where Jesus broke bread with another tax collector. And I just want to add this one to the mix. And you all remember the story. It's probably a couple of years later. And Jesus, by this time, his fame has gone out. People know who he is, and big crowds are gathering around. And there's a tax collector by the name of Zacchaeus. And what was unique about Zacchaeus? He was short. And so maybe you can't stop this guy from collecting your taxes. But you know what we can do? We can stop him from seeing Jesus. And all he wanted to do was catch a glimpse, and he kept on kind of poking through the crowd. And these guys were all blocking him out. They wouldn't let him. I mean, maybe they couldn't stop this guy, but they could stop him from seeing Jesus, which I think is sort of funny. And so then Zacchaeus realizes he's not going to win this battle. He's too small. He's not going to get through these big, burly Hebrew men. So he goes and climbs up the sycamore tree. So he's hanging in the sycamore tree, waiting for Jesus to come by. And Jesus comes by and walks by and sees him up in the tree. You all remember this. He looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down at once, for today I must go to your house. And he went to Zacchaeus' house, and he broke bread with Zacchaeus. He had a meal with him and all of his tax collector buddies and whoever else he knew. And so we don't actually know what Jesus said during that time. We just know they ate together and they were obviously conversing. And all of a sudden, Zacchaeus does something really strange, and he stands up and he says, I've made this decision that I'm going to give half my goods to the poor, and if I've wronged any man, I'm going to repay him fourfold. Now, I have a question for you. Did Jesus tell him to do that? There's no record that Jesus told him to do that. I think if he had told him, it would have said he told him. Not only that, there's no command. You don't have to do that. This was something Zacchaeus came up on his own. You say, why did he come up with that? I'll tell you why. Because when you encounter Jesus, Jesus has the power to change you. And this is what happens. And this is why people need to encounter Jesus. This is why they need to meet Jesus. Because even without hearing a word, if they will meet Jesus, if they will encounter Jesus, things happen. And so all Jesus did, his simple strategy, was to go eat with sinners. Not only tax collectors, but prostitutes and all kinds of other people. And he ate with these people. And so then what happened, he's got a bit of a reputation. Remember this? And what did they accuse Jesus of being? A friend of? A friend of sinners. Do you know why they called him that? Do you know why they accused him of being a friend of sinners? Anybody know? Because he was a friend of sinners. Aren't you glad to come to church and you learn this stuff? Well, I figured this stuff up. I spend hours figuring this stuff out, and I share it with you. So they called him a friend of sinners because he was a friend of sinners. I don't want you to miss this. Jesus never treated anyone like a spiritual project. No one was ever an evangelistic project. Do you know that nobody wants to be a project? Nobody wants to be your project. And that's why I always tell people, I warn them, I say, you know what you should do? You should not evangelize your friends. You should enjoy your friends. I mean, there's something powerful about this. If we begin to enjoy our friends, then, you know, the evangelism thing is secondary to that.